Like I said the other day, there was no need to keep Kenny Pickett. The Browns agreed. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer Sherman, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. Andrew Berry strikes again. He trades Kenny Pickett to the Raiders. It's the latest move in what's been arguably Andrew Berry's best offseason for the Browns. Also, the Browns QB plan finally makes some sense, and the role that Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel played in this decision coming to fruition. I do want to thank you for being in every day at the Locked On Browns podcast and making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, plus some bonus content on some weekends as well, especially throughout the season. So make sure you make us your first listen every single day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now. Yes, it did happen. It's official. The Browns traded Kenny Pickett last night to the Las Vegas Raiders for a 5th-round pick in 2026. Now, I want to explain a little bit what happened here, because I initially thought this was the path of how things would play out. I thought that Kenny Pickett would end up the odd man out. I thought he should be the odd man out pretty much from the beginning of this competition, despite what was being reported about the fact that the team really liked Kenny Pickett and thought he had a legitimate shot at winning the starting job. That obviously got derailed by the hamstring injury. And in recent weeks, I had pivoted to believing, okay, they're going to keep all 4 quarterbacks. And that was real. That was real. They were okay keeping all 4 quarterbacks. And I think you got those sentiments from Andrew Berry on the broadcast over the weekend, where he told Chris Rose, like, it's not even a decision for us. It's easy. We feel good about it, whatever. Like, they were ready to keep 4 quarterbacks. I wholeheartedly believe that in my heart of hearts, based on what I know, based on the things that I've heard. And so because of that, I think you're looking at a situation that was like, things change, and they change quickly in this league. And what changed was you had a team that was desperate enough to pull the trigger, to give the Browns what they were asking for, to get a backup quarterback. And that was the scenario that we talked about all offseason, potentially being the way that you whittle down this quarterback depth chart, right? It was this idea that you get to training camp, there's always injuries, there's always guys that get hurt, and then maybe a team gets desperate enough that they're like, you know what? We need that guy. Let's go make a trade. And that's what happened with the Raiders, with Aiden O'Connell suffering the wrist injury. That essentially cleared the path for them to need a backup quarterback. That became a big priority for them. And here they were pulling the trigger, sending a 5th-round pick back to Andrew Berry to get Kenny Pickett out there. Aiden O'Connell is going to miss about 6 to 8 weeks, so this makes a lot of sense for them. They can get somebody in quickly, acclimate them, all those different things. And so after trading a 5th-round pick plus DTR and the initial deal to the Eagles to get Kenny Pickett, this essentially makes the deal a wash for the Browns, who now have 10 picks in 2026. That falls in line with what we've heard Jimmy Haslam say about how this team was focused on accumulating draft picks and how they were going to continue to try to do that. So like I in terms of like the haul, in terms of this kind of coming to fruition, I do think it's a win for the Browns. It's a win for Andrew Berry. I get it. You're going to look back and say, well, they gave up more than what they got back in return for Kenny Pickett. And that's fair. But also DTR was just released by the Eagles. So it's not like the Eagles got some massive asset out of Kenny Pickett that now all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, you overpay. I mean, he's now free to sign basically anywhere. Like, if the Browns really wanted to add him back, they could. Maybe they'll sign him to the practice squad for all we know. Who knows? But you know, it's an interesting situation. Yes, I get it. It's unique in that way. But to get a 5th-round pick back and basically just replenish the pick that you gave up, you essentially only traded DTR for Kenny Pickett. in the end, like it was basically just like a quarterback swap, if you will. And so from that standpoint, like it's a win. And I do think, again, I want to reiterate, like that they were planning on keeping 4 quarterbacks. That was going to be the direction they were going. And then circumstances changed, as they tend to do in the NFL. And the Raiders are willing to pay up what Andrew Berry was looking for. I think the fact that the trade ends as a wash is awesome. And I also think it speaks to the fact that aside from the Quinshon Judkins unexpectedly winding up in a legal situation that he was in, and that's still sort of playing out right now where he's not signed, not at camp, all those different things. This has been arguably Andrew Berry's best offseason since he's been with the Browns. Now, that does take some projecting here by what we think these rookies are going to do and what we think these rookies are going to be. But I think I can say this. I think right now, based on what we've seen at training camp and throughout the preseason, I feel really good about Carson Schlesinger and Mason Graham basically being like 2 defensive studs for this team. And those are your first 2 picks. And if they short up 2 spots there, if he nailed those 2 picks, like you already feel pretty good about that situation in general. Quinshon's not here, and again, that's the biggest blemish to his class that he signed. But without I've been harping on the fact for months that I thought Quinshon was ready to be that lead horse back to sort of assume that role, his play style, running like Kareem Hunt, all those things I brought up over the this past year. Make me believe that when he is out there, he has a chance to be great, especially in this system and in this offense. So I feel good about the prospects of him eventually being good. It's just going to take it's going to take longer than anybody expected to get him in the building and ready to compete and play and contribute to this team. And then beyond that, like I think you have some other pieces in this draft class that you answered. Harold Fannin Jr. seems like he's going to make a major impact. He's going to be very involved in this offense. If one of the quarterbacks at least pans out, you feel like you maybe find a guy that's at least a long-term backup for you, if not your franchise quarterback. I hope it's the latter. And then like this would be a knockout of the park draft class just in general. And then that's on top of the fact that like I've mentioned that I think the Malik Collins move was a slept on move by this team. I think adding him to the defensive line has been as we've already seen the impact of that. I think we're going to see it in the regular season. He's a great player. And it sort of, again, goes unnoticed, but he's good. He's a good player. I think Cornelius Lucas could end up being a pretty strong swing tackle for you. They did a lot with a little. And I do think in that respect, like Andrew Berry deserves some bit of, I get it. He's had bad drafts. There's a lot of reasons to be critical of Andrew Berry to this point in his tenure. But I do think this year he, as I said, took lemons and tried to make lemonade the best he could with what he had. And I think there's a chance that this could set the foundation for the team moving forward if they get Quinshon in the building at least, and if this regime has time to see it through, like it could be the thing that sort of turns the franchise around and gets things back on track. So a lot of reason for optimism. I'm not going to sit here and say like Andrew Berry's totally redeemed himself and he shouldn't, his job shouldn't be at stake if the team has another bad year, any of those things. Like he's in this spot because of decisions that he's made to this point, including the Deshaun Watson trade, which he's going to have to wear for the rest of his career. And so those things they're not forgotten by any stretch, but I do think this is setting up to be, especially if you get a couple foundational pieces here that are contributing for the future and you save your job because of it. And you get another go around next year to have another draft class that can maybe blend in with this one to be your future. I think this is has the potential to go down as Andrew Berry's best offseason. And this Kenny Pickett trade to get a 5th-round pick back after giving up a 5th-round pick and basically only losing DTR over it, who's now a free agent or is going to be available for anybody to sign off of waivers. Like, I think it's another positive move for Berry this offseason. And I think he's set this organization in the right place to go through this transition and maybe be set up for the future and longer term if it all works out. Now I use the word if, like we still have to see it, but I do think that this right now looks like it's trending to be Berry's best offseason that he's had here. And that's good news if you're hoping that he can sort of salvage this thing and get the train back on the tracks and get the Browns going in the right direction. We'll see. But man, like I was stunned by this because I was convinced in my heart of hearts they were going to keep all 4. But as I said, circumstances change, and he was able to swing a deal with the Raiders. It makes sense that they were calling. I even mentioned it on yesterday's show that maybe there was now this market for Kenny Pickett. And what do you know? It emerges. Kenny Pickett's going to Las Vegas. By the way, circle your calendar for November 23rd. Browns at Raiders. Could we get a Kenny Pickett revenge game? We shall see. But we can't talk about this situation without also highlighting the fact that the Browns quarterback plan finally makes sense. Hallelujah. I've been waiting to say that about this process and the way that they were heading. Now I finally can, and we'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. Just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this moment's for you. Maybe you've got a gut feeling about who the MVP is going to be this year. Honestly, I kind of thought Joe Burrow, had he gotten the Bengals to the playoffs last year, should have won it, but obviously they fell short and he didn't. If he's able to pull that off this year, especially with the shaky defense that it looks like the Bengals might have for the second straight year, I think it could be his. Speaking of the playoffs, is this finally the year that Buffalo comes through in the AFC, or is the title the Eagles to lose again? Place a futures bet on your favorite to win a championship on August 26th. Visit the FanDuel app and start planning your future bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. Finally, I can say that the Browns have a sensible plan at quarterback. It makes sense now. This move, moving on from Kenny Pickett, allows the team to do the thing that I've been saying they should be doing from the beginning, which is prioritize the rookies, get them on the field sooner. I'm all for that. It's the way that it should be. And now with Kenny Pickett out of the way, the Browns can 100% do that by getting Dillon, Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders up the depth chart, closer to playing sooner rather than later. That's what we all wanted to see. That's the way that this room should be set up. Trying to shoehorn Kenny Pickett into this quartet to play after Flacco and be that primary backup to him before the rookies was just going to be a straight up waste of time. Didn't need to see it. Was going to be useless. It always should have been that the Flacco and Pickett part of this conversation was them duking it out for the starting job. And then from there, the rookies duking it out to be the primary backup. And one of the two veterans was going to be gone, which is what I thought for a while was what was going to happen here. And that's exactly what ends up happening in the end. And maybe not by the exact way they drew it up or designed it, but here we are. And so this now sets the stage for Flacco to be your starter, Dillon Gabriel to be your primary backup, and Shedeur Sanders to be the next in line behind him as your third string quarterback. And I think that's a quarterback room that everybody should be happy with. Everybody should be able to work with. There's a little bit of risk in doing this. We'll talk about that here a little bit more coming up. But here's the thing. I've used this line a ton throughout this offseason. The Browns are in this weird stage, this weird phase where they are trying to win now while also looking ahead to the future. It's not a surprise. That's not a shock. It's just where this team is at, right? They drafted a lot of guys this year that they're hoping have immediate impacts on this team. They know they are. This Pickett trade is another example of the draft pick accumulation that they're doing. They have 10 picks right now set up for next year. All their picks through most of the rounds, I think through rounds 1 through 5, and then they have 2 6ths and 2 7ths, and now I think they have 2 5ths again. So they have 10 picks. I should have mapped it all out, but you get the gist of it. They have 10 total picks, though I know for sure next year right now as things stand, and that is a team that is trying to increase the draft capital they have, increase the bites at the apple that they can take it with next year's draft class to continue to bolster the roster and fill it out. That can use those picks to move up and down the board for certain players. Maybe it will be for another quarterback, a franchise quarterback next year. Maybe it will be for something else that they know is a top priority. If it shakes out that DeJuan Jones can't really be their starting left tackle, maybe they want to move him back to the right side next year or whatever. That's fine. That maybe they want to go get a left tackle and they can use those picks to move around the board wherever they feel like they need to move to make things happen. So these are all signs that they're also in a state of rebuild. And you're aware of that. You're not naive as a fan of this team. Like many fans of this team, when Myles Garrett was out parading around on Radio Row, were comfortable trading Myles and moving on from him because of the capital that you get back in return, and maybe the players that you would get back. Like the haul that you would get from Myles Garrett was enough to entice people to be like, you know what, if he doesn't want to be here, fine, move off of him, get all the picks, tank for a year, and then use those picks to rebuild from the ground up. Now, I've argued, again, that's not necessarily the way you have to do it in today's NFL. I think the trying to win now while threading the needle on winning now and trying to sort of construct a roster can work effectively, especially when you accumulate the types of picks that the Browns are accumulating. They have 2 firsts next year. That's the type of thing that can allow you to make a big move up the board for a player that you really like, whether it's a quarterback or otherwise. Now, it probably would be a quarterback over anything else, but if that's what they're trying to do, they're well positioned to do that, whether they lose 3 games and they're back at the top of the board, or win 3 games, they're back at the top of the board, or they're more in the middle of the road and they need to make a move up the board. They have the draft capital to do that now. And so they're in this weird transitional phase where they are trying to rebuild while still trying to be competitive, because they have a number of guys on this roster that, frankly, want to be competitive. And Joe Bitonio came back because he doesn't want to retire yet. And he wants to try to go out and win and have a better season. Myles Garrett is in the prime of his career. He doesn't want to waste a year. Like, they're going to try to compete. Flacco's here to sort of give you some stability at the quarterback position initially, but then you have these 2 rookies that you can get out there and play sooner rather than later. And that's the important thing here. As they're in this weird transitional phase, I don't need to waste time seeing Kenny Pickett for like a 4-game stretch if things go awry with Joe Flacco. That would have been a waste of time. It's just not something that I needed to see. This now allows you, if the season starts to slide a little bit, if Flacco maybe plays well early on, but then things are faltering and you get to a certain point in the season and you're like, all right, well, now it's time to make a change. Now you give yourself a larger sample size of games for these 2 rookies to evaluate. And that's the key thing here. For a team that does not have a franchise quarterback, for a team that has longed to find that franchise quarterback for the better part of nearly 3 decades now, you want to put yourself in a position to figure out what you have in the guys currently on the roster that are rookies, figure out if you need to draft a quarterback next year. It's not an exact science. So like even if they each get like 5 games before the end of the season, that's not going to be enough of a sample size to really truly know, but you can at least get a better picture of things. I'd rather have that than have it be Flacco to Pickett. And this is what I talked about after the game on Saturday. Have it be Flacco to Pickett, and then you have like 6 games at the end of the season to sort of see how you divvy those up between the two rookies or whatever. Like, I just don't, I didn't need that. I'd rather you leave more of a runway for these two rookies to play. And that's what this sort of sets the stage for, is that we're all, I think many of us are anticipating this season is not going to go well for the Browns. They might, win some games, steal some here or there, play pretty well with Flacco. I'm not necessarily sitting here thinking it's going to be just a copy and paste, start all over from 2023, and it's going to be like that all over again. I'm not going to sit here and say that and try to sell anybody on that. There could be some good moments. There could be some bad moments. It comes with the territory of starting a 40-year-old Joe Flacco at quarterback. But what I will say is, if once things go awry, now you have something to look forward to in the form of these two rookies that you get to evaluate and get a sense of like, okay, where will this team be at that position specifically heading into 2026, when they could maybe draft another one, or maybe they think they might find the guy. Maybe they think it's Dillon Gabriel. Maybe they think it's Shedeur Sanders by the end of the year. And then you can use those picks that they have on other players to help support in supporting roles of those quarterbacks. So it's an important process to go through. This plan actually makes sense now. Flacco to the rookies makes way more sense than Flacco Pickett to the rookies. When you have two of them that you're trying to sort of get a better picture on here in general, it made no sense. I understand they didn't necessarily plan on drafting two when the draft started back in April. If they had left with just one, you could have got away with keeping Kenny Pickett, but you took two. And I think you're doing yourself a disservice as a franchise. You're doing everybody a disservice as a franchise if you were going to keep 4 guys and try to trot another veteran out there just to kind of bridge the gap for a little bit longer and pretend that you're a contending team, when really what you need to do here is see what you have in these 2 guys that you took sooner, rather more swiftly than like. And I know they want to be patient with them, but one of the best evaluators is what they do in actual regular season meaningful games. And so giving them more of those opportunities, giving them more of those reps in the regular season is more valuable than anything that you would have gotten from Kenny Pickett. And I can almost guarantee that. It's unfortunate that this is the way that it went. They thought highly of Kenny Pickett. By the way, the fact that they were able to trade Kenny Pickett after he didn't play pretty much the entirety of training camp in the preseason because he had this hamstring injury, I think is another reason why it ended up being sort of like a savvy move in the end for Andrew Berry to get a 5th-round pick back, because he sold sort of a bag of damaged goods to a degree. I mean, he's not damaged. I shouldn't say that, but he sold something that I didn't know, that was something that probably didn't have a lot of value at this juncture because of the hamstring injury. He somehow got at least what he paid for back. He broke even almost, other than the fact that DTR was included, but he essentially broke even because the Eagles waived DTR on the deal, and that's impressive in some respects. So yeah, I think I'm on board with this from a number of different ways. It was always what I wanted to see happen, and now we know that Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders are only a few plays away from potentially playing in meaningful football games, and I think that's the best outcome anybody could ask for, because we all want to see what these 2 guys can do, and if there's something to them rather, in terms of being the franchise quarterback for this team. Now they have more opportunities to potentially do that. Speaking of Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, let's not forget the role that they played in this move coming to fruition. We'll talk about that coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. We at Locked On have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes the survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thank you for helping us out. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. The NFL season is right around the corner, and you can feel the buzz. Fantasy football season is here. Everyone's researching, drafting, and building their championship squads. If you haven't joined a league yet, now's the time, and it's all happening on Yahoo Fantasy. I'm playing Yahoo Fantasy for I don't even know how many years I've been in a Yahoo Fantasy league at this point, but it is my favorite league, and you can enjoy it too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran creating your millionth league. With the season set to kick off on September 4th, now is the time to start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football, which offers so many fun ways to compete. Want more ways to play? Try the brand new Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine League, where the lowest scoring team each week gets eliminated until there's one team left standing. Want to play instantly with friends? Well, try the new Draft with Friends mode. Prefer the classics? Get your crew together and go head-to-head in a private league. No crew, no problem. Join a public league, the easiest way to play. The NFL season kicks off September 4th, so don't wait. Start your league now, draft now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. So I think it's also important to note here as we put the kibosh on our overall thoughts on the Kenny Pickett trade to remember the role that both Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders played in this move also coming to fruition, because this move doesn't happen without them showing what they showed in training camp in the preseason. And I know what people are going to say first and foremost here. They're going to throw in my face, well, what did Shedeur really show on Saturday in the preseason finale? They're going to use that as some barometer of where he is. And I get that. Like, I think we saw that he's a rookie player on Saturday, and somebody that still needs some time to learn and develop. And that's okay, as I've said numerous times, but I still think the overall evaluation here for Shedeur Sanders is a positive one. You saw a player that I think was the most consistent at training camp. That the things that he wasn't doing well on Saturday, by the way, are the things that he seemed to have mastered in training camp on the practice field. And even in that first preseason game, it was taking what was there, taking what the defense was giving you, not doing the drift in the pocket thing, because he would he would get ball, see options, throw ball, and get it out quickly. Like, though that was happening consistently at practice, it just didn't translate on the field on that specific day. And I wondered if he was pressing a little bit, but I think generally you can walk away feeling like Shedeur Sanders had a very positive and productive training camp and preseason. I think obviously we can feel the same about Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel was kind of a flip situation where he wasn't very good at practice, but in his two preseason games, he made the most of those opportunities by again, the first preseason game he played in, of course, he had the 2 turnovers, which weren't great, but you saw somebody who came out in that second preseason game he played in against the Rams this weekend who learned from those things. I remember explaining after the game, like the play where he was flushed from the pocket left, same way he was when he threw the pick in the week prior. And instead of forcing something, he just threw it away. That's the smart decision that the Browns are looking for. And that's what the Browns are looking for these guys to do, is just learn as they go, develop new habits and new traits, or maybe not traits, because traits are already sort of in place, but new skills, and just get better overall at the quarterback position. And I think you saw that from Dillon masterfully these last on Saturday. And he did enough alone to convince the Browns, like, hey, we feel good about having you be the primary backup, and then Shedeur being the third string behind him as he continues to grow as well. I think both rookies in general made the most of the reps that they had on the practice field, in the preseason games, and it was enough to have the Browns feel like, you know what, if we move on from Kenny Pickett, because I told you they were going to keep 4. They were going to keep 4 on Tuesday here today, and it didn't happen that way because they ended up being comfortable enough with what they had in these 2 rookies to be like, all right, fine, we'll roll the dice here a little bit, move off of Kenny Pickett, and set ourselves up to have Flacco and the 2 rookies be our quarterback room. It is a risk to a degree because, listen, they're 2 years removed from banking on a rookie as the primary backup. They did it with DTR in his rookie year. If you remember, they traded Josh Dobbs at the very end of training camp, right before roster cutdown day, similar to what they did with Kenny Pickett here. And so it's risky. And that was one of the things people cited as a reason why, well, hey, they probably won't do this again, and they probably will keep Kenny Pickett and keep all four, because they saw that didn't really work out for them when they had DTR as the primary backup. He just wasn't ready for that in that year. But I think they feel better about both these rookies. I think both these rookies showed they're probably even further along than a guy like DTR was at that time. And so it speaks to how much they believe in these two rookies in general, to where they're at right now, but also that they're going to continue to get better each and every single week and continue to adjust to the NFL game. And that if when their opportunities come, they'll be out there. I also have to think to a degree that the Deshaun Watson piece of this played a role as well. We all know he's kind of lurking in the shadows right now, no pun intended. And at some point, there's going to be some sort of, he gets a clean bill of health, and the Browns are going to have to decide what they're going to do at the quarterback position, or not at the quarterback position, but just with him. Are they going to slow play it and put him on the PUP list and then not activate him and have the team doctors kind of say like, well, we don't necessarily know if he's back or if he's ready or whatever? Like, how they treat it is going to be fascinating, but that could play a role in this as well, where it's like, well, at some point he's going to be back, or if they think he's going to be back sooner rather than later, and they can't try to skirt the rules too much, because then you're facing a litigation from the NFLPA, then maybe they thought it was best to just move on from Kenny Pickett now, because they're going to be carrying forward for most of the season anyway. So that's another part of this. But I think at the root of this decision is the fact that, yes, you were getting the draft pick back that you gave up. And it was an opportunity to add to your stockpile of picks. Of course, that's always going to be a heavily weighted factor when it comes to moves like this. But also the fact that that the team clearly walked away from what they saw in training camp in the preseason with confidence in both Gabriel and Sanders to man this room in that order, Flacco, Gabriel, Sanders, and that they were ready for a heavier workload and ready for, being just a few plays away from having to step on the football field and actually run this team and run this offense and be the starting quarterback. That can't be understated either. I think both, again, made the most of their opportunities this training camp and preseason. And now they've been rewarded for it to a degree, because they're both moving up the depth chart and they're both going to have a chance to play sooner rather than later, which is the best thing to come out of all this. Another episode down with you, Dog Pound. Never a dull moment with the Cleveland Browns. They always got something cooking. So thank you for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team, and make sure you hit that subscribe button, especially if you liked what you heard today. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts, and of course at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day if you haven't done it already. For your second listen, you can check out Locked On Fantasy Football with hosts Vinny Liar and Michelle Madjuke. Listen every day to prep for your fantasy draft and become the most informed manager in your league. Or, as always, you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon as tomorrow. See you, Cleveland.